Hey, 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 hey. I am running a bit behind and I apologize. Please let me know if you can hear me on YouTube and if you can hear me on Instagram, please. I have these headphones in my ears because I simulcast on both and I'm not quite sure if I can be heard. I also put my phones on Do Not Disturb, so please let me know. Thumbs up if you can hear me. That would be ideal. Oh, right, I can hear myself. So that's a good thing. Welcome, 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 welcome. And I'm sorry that I'm running behind adulting. What can I say? Adulting is a thing, and I have to keep adulting, and I don't like it. So it is what it's. I do not like adulting. I blame my parents for this adulting thing. I didn't ask for this, but I have to do it. And so I show up every week despite me hating adulting. I am actually really looking forward to this topic tonight, like really, because I did ask the question to men, and I'm gonna try to follow the chat, guys. And pardon me if I'm not following it as well as possible. I'm going to try to follow the chat on both Instagram and YouTube simultaneously. So, and I would love for people to share their thoughts on this topic tonight, which I am titling Dear Black Men, How Can We Love You Better? And I was thinking about this topic because I was actually rewatching a show that I did called Dear Love about a year and a bit ago with the person who was now my ex-fiance, who I started this show with. And as part of a book that I'm writing called Fuck Your Feelings, The Journey to Imperfect Love, I wanted to explore the concept of love. So I was rewatching the show and listening to us as we read our letters to love. And my ex at the time, well, he was my fiance at the time, he was mentioning the fact that I was the first woman to ever ask him, how can I love you better? And we're grown folks. So, and he had been married before, so had I. And so looking at him and hearing him say that again, I wanted to really have this conversation with men. And next week, I'm actually going to have the conversation with women. Next week, I'm going to ask women how they want to be loved and how they want men to show up in their lives. But this week, I really wanted to focus on the men. And I went to men in my life. I went to men on the internet. And I asked them the question. And I got 13 responses, one which is a voice note where somebody shared that. And it was interesting because a lot of the men said that, again, they've never been asked this question. You know, one man said he really needed to take some time to think about it because it's not a question that he's often asked. And when I hear this, I sit back and I don't know, I'm saddened a bit. I'm saddened a bit to know that our men are not in a position where they can say, this is a question I get asked all the time, and so they're ready with a response. They actually have to sit back and think about it because it isn't something that we're asking them. It had saddened me when, you know, my ex said to me I was the first woman in his life that had ever asked him how they could love him better. And this is a man who had been with many women because of his time in professional basketball and his stature. And so to think that no one had ever bothered to ask him how he could be loved, I thought if he was in that position, I can imagine how many other Black men had been in a position where nobody had bothered to ask them how they could be loved. So I'm actually going to try to turn on the chat so I can see what's going on, and I hope that I'm doing it right. But I am going to start, and if anybody in the chat wants to add anything, please do. But I'm going to start with a couple of the answers that I got of how a Black man said, and these are all Black men who said that they could be loved better. Some of these are a bit short, and some of them are going to be a little bit longer. And like I said, one is a voice note. And then we're going to go through the themes that keep showing up. So I'm gonna, kind of write down certain words that keep coming up that these Black men were asking for. So the first answer I got about how do you want to be loved? So that was the question I posed, was Black men, how do you want to be loved? So one person said without jealousy. Another person responded unconditionally. A third person said selflessly. The fourth person said once again unconditionally. The fifth response was unconditionally without no exceptions. And the sixth person said that I wrote down physical touch and words of affirmation. So I'm going to stop at those first six because the other ones I will get to. They're a little bit longer. And like I said, one is a voice note. 50%, the word unconditionally came up. So of the six responses, 3 men said they want to be loved unconditionally. And I really want us to think about why that word keeps coming up. I'm pausing for dramatic effect. Well, I'll tell you why. In speaking with a lot of men in my life, they feel as if, especially in today's society, our love for them comes with conditions. And the conditions are generally based not on what we experience in our real life, but it's what we are seeing in the social media sphere. And so the concept of love being tied to money, stature, provision, right? Not so much protection, because I think most men in my life understand that protection is what comes with being a man in a relationship. And yes, they understand very much that so does provision. However, provision comes in different forms these days, according to social media. Provision comes in a man making 6 figures or being in the 1%. And you will hear women come on shows that say, well, $100,000 isn't that hard to make. I think about 20 years ago, before this whole internet and people gaining internet fame, where it is a little bit easier now with the internet to make $100,000. But years ago, making $100,000 required completing high school, generally 4 years of university, and then maybe a few years of post-grad and getting into a career, law, engineering, medicine, being a CPA. Or you went the other way, where you finished high school, you went to trade school, and you went through and became a master plumber, a master electrician, whatever it is. But it actually required putting in work. And so when a man came to you and he was a 6-figure man, he had put in the work, and there was a level of respect and adoration, and men and women wanted to listen to them and hear from them and find out what they did in order to be able to get to that place. Now we look at someone making $100,000 as if it's ordering a Big Mac from McDonald's. Like, it's just so easy. You can just go and order up a man, and the 6-figure man, and he's going to be right there. And so there are a lot of men who are saying, I'm being loved with conditions. If I were to lose this all, is this woman going to love me? And ladies, I will tell you, the men who said unconditionally, that responded to me in that way, I know for a fact that 2 of the 3 make over 6 figures. Probably closer to 7 figures. They make really good money. And so I think we need to be in a position where we are leaving room, where let's start with, we're leaving room for men to express themselves completely and wholly without the feelings component. Again, if you're new to the show, I will tell you, fuck your feelings does not mean that I do not care about people's feelings. What the premise of fuck your feelings really was about was the fact that when I was expressing myself, my partner doesn't get to tell me that my expression of myself to them about what I'm feeling or what I'm going through messed up their feelings, and vice versa. I didn't get to say when my ex-fiance was expressing his thoughts, his feelings, and desires, or whatever was going on, that, you know what, babe, I can't believe you said that because you hurt my feelings. And now I had invalidated his feelings and made it about mine. That's not cool. And so a lot of us have done that. I'm guilty of that. I'm talking about it in my next book. I'm so guilty of that. And it was in that moment when my ex looked down at me. And I just want you to imagine, I'm 5'5". My ex is 6'9", and he looks down at me and tells me, fuck your feelings. I clutched my invisible pearls, as I talk about in my books. And, it took me a second where I was just like, he's right. In this moment, it wasn't about me. I was invalidating what he was expressing to me because I was making something about me that in that moment that wasn't about me. And I started thinking about how many men I had done that to in the past and how many women were currently doing that to their men. And that's actually what birthed this show and the concept of fuck your feelings, was to ensure that we are not invalidating others' feelings. And in order to do so, we often have to fuck our own feelings to allow our partner room to express themselves so that your relationship can grow. That is the whole premise of this show. So going back to what these men are saying, the fact that, again, the first 6 that I read, 50% of the men use that word unconditionally. And you have to understand, they don't know that the other ones are saying that. I don't share the results of this until, like, hours later. So they are not seeing what other people are responding. And of course, the ones who actually text me or left me a voice note, they have no idea. I did not share with any of these men what other men are saying. And that word unconditionally came up. And there's another word that you're going to hear that came up for the men that wrote it. But I would be curious to know from men, what does it look like for a woman to love you unconditionally? For those of you online who think that that's a great word to use, what does it look like for a woman to love you unconditionally? Have you ever experienced a love that you felt was unconditional? And let me say, I don't believe in testing women. I don't believe in testing men, right? I don't believe that we should go into situations where we're already testing people, right? Like, they don't know the answer to the quiz, we've never given it to them, so they're bound to fail. So I'm not about, hey, let's test somebody's if they come with conditions or so forth. I think you should be able to, at our big age, kind of decipher someone's heart, someone's intentions. I think that's important, right, through conversation. But for a man, what does it look like to be loved unconditionally? I think maybe that will be my follow-up question to these men is, okay, so what does unconditional love look like to you? So for the men online, I want you to think about that. I want you to take that away for a second. What does unconditional love look like? What would it feel like? What would it sound like? Because our tongue, ladies, is a very powerful tool. it is something that can speak life into someone, and it is also the tongue that can take life out of someone, like truly take life out of someone. And so for men, I would love for you to be able to tell me, what does unconditional love look like, feel like, and sound like to you? Because it's more than just this, I think, need or desire to know that someone is going to be there for you through thick and thin. I think I get that part. I think most of us will get that part. But that's just not enough. Like knowing and feeling or whatever, but what are we showing? What are we showing? So that was the first ones that I got about men saying how they want to be loved. So B. Shelley Stokes, thank you for your response. It looks like being, oh, Lord of mercy, I can't read this. Let me try and see if I can put this up. It looks like being realistic about, I'm so sorry, I can't see this. This is awful. About us being imperfect and us being willing to work through every issue that arises over the lifetime of our partnership. I'm hoping I read that completely right, just because, let me actually pin it. I'm actually going to try to pin it, and then if I pin it, I can see. There we go. You said it looks like being realistic about us being imperfect and us being willing. I feel like Kendra right now, I can't read. And us being willing to work through every issue that would arise over the lifetime of our partnership. I think that that word imperfect is so spot on. Like, again, the title of my next book is The Journey to Imperfect Love. There is no perfect love. There is no perfect relationship. There is no perfect life. Like the saying says, if you want to make God laugh, show him your plan. And a lot of us are going into relationships expecting perfection, and it just doesn't exist. And relationships are work. One of the sayings that, my ex and I, talked about all the time on our show was the fact that we were committed to the commitment of being together. We weren't just committed to each other, we committed to the commitment of being together. And even though we're no longer together, and if you ever want to know, you've never watched the show, I'm happy to say why we're not together. But it was, we woke up every day saying that we were going to choose each other. Every day we understood that it was an opportunity to start anew, and that when we woke up that morning, blessed to see another day, we were choosing each other, and we were committed to whatever work it took to get to the other side of this day. And it was an everyday thing. Relationships are not unicorns and butterflies. They are imperfect. Life is going to happen. We cannot predict what's going to happen next. No one could have predicted COVID, right? Like most of us couldn't have said there was going to be something that was going to shut down our world and change our reality, but it did. And so to think that we're going to go through a relationship 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years without there being issues, I think that's naive of us, and you're not going to go into love naively. So thank you. I think I can end in this. Thank you so much for that comment. It was really important. Thank you for answering. So I'm going to read some of the other comments that I got. If you just give me 1 second, let me just pull it up. And then I have a voice note. I had put it at a certain point, but I started watching something. So I'm going to have to get to the point where he starts answering the question. But it was very poignant. Like, again, men, I appreciate you for answering and really thinking through what you wanted to say to me. So let me get to the 7 other responses that I have when I asked men how they wanted to be loved. So, someone who will be there for me regardless of my status. They love me for me. This is saying unconditionally without saying the word unconditionally. He continues to say, just stand by me through thick and thin. I'm going to fuck up, or I might act a little wild because my need to lead, but I'll always be loyal and make sure my lady gets what she wants slash needs. The next person said, I'm going to laugh a little bit at this one. Again, answering the question, how do you want to be loved? He made it very simple. He said, and I quote, supported, respected, and fucked. Very clear. A woman who supports him, respects him, and will fuck him. It was a very clear response. I appreciated it. The next man said, the same effort that the same effort that I make to love someone is what I want in return. Effort, priority, and protecting our bond. And because I messed that up, let me repeat the answer. The same effort that I make to love someone is what I want in return. Effort, priority, and protecting our bond. I actually really like that last part, protecting our bond. It is understanding that it is both of you against the world, not you against each other. And I'm going to put this down for a second before I get to the others. I was recently having a conversation with someone, and they were talking about the last relationship that they were in and kind of why they needed to step back before they were ready to get back on the market. And he said, I was in this relationship and I felt as if my woman was constantly in competition with me. Instead of us against the world, he felt that it was her against him and him against her. And in his mind, and again, there's two sides to every story, but in his mind, it wasn't him doing that, it was constantly her. So instead of being in a position where he felt that they were working together, it was always if she always wanted to one up him. And so it was this tug of war in his home because they lived together. So his place of solace became as if it was like WWE and they were constantly competing. And he was like, there was no support. There was no kind of protecting our bond. Like, right? There was no Bonnie and Clyde. There was me against her instead of us against the world. And I think that's important. What does it look like? Right? Again, when men are giving us this answer, we need to find out and dig deeper. Because even with some of the conversations I had, when they would give me an answer, I'd ask them to elaborate, because that's what I would do in my relationship. When I asked my ex, how can I love you better? I sat there and listened and I asked him to elaborate on it. And then I asked him, okay, what can I do to love you better? Like, what are the actionable steps that I can take that will show you that I'm loving you better? Because the issue that I was seeing for myself is I'm loving you. Like, I was completely obsessed with my ex. Like, it was an obsession. Like, I loved that man, gave him everything I had to give. But I was like, am I loving him in a way that he can receive? Because you could be loving someone, but because of everything that has gone on in their life, in their world, even the things that they're currently battling, right? Like, ladies, if you're saying that you want that successful Black man, well, that successful Black man is fighting battles you cannot even imagine. When they're standing in those boardrooms, when they're standing in those meetings, when they're one of few, if you've ever been with a man who is one of few Black men in a room of other powerful men, you cannot begin to understand the battles that he faces. As a Black woman who's been one of few in directors' meetings, I know the battle I face. So I always compound that by 3 for a successful Black man and what that looks like. So we say again, we want protection, we want provision, we want all of those things that men give, but you understand that the men who are protecting and providing for us, the battles that they face out there. And so you cannot be in a position where he's fighting battles out there and then he comes home and he's going to fight battles with you. I'm not saying being docile. I am far from, I don't consider myself a docile woman. That's just not who I am. But I do consider myself a woman who desires peace. And so if I'm going to create a peaceful environment, what does that look like? Because I'm not only just creating peace for him, I desire peace. I don't operate well in chaos. If my life is chaotic, it doesn't work for me because I wear way too many hats in my life to have to be in a space of chaos. It doesn't work. And so think about the environment that you grow in. Think about the environment that you flourish in. You want this man to be able to flourish. You want your relationship to be able to flourish. It needs to be in really good soil. And listening to what these men are saying is going to be really important to have a relationship that flourishes. So I've got a couple more. And again, please, men, chime in. I'd love to hear your thoughts for those who did not respond. If you have any words on this, please let me know and I will read it on the show. So a few more. So this response was, I like someone in my corner while addressing the challenges of life. Secondly, loyalty matters. Lastly, respect is a big deal to me. You demonstrate love for me by implementing these three principles. So someone in their corner, someone who is loyal, and someone who is respectful. So other words that have come up again are loyalty and respect. Key words that we need to be listening to. Okay. So another person said, I want to be loved wholeheartedly, going back to the word unconditionally. I want that love to be authentic, full of grace and empathy, and always open to seeing the excitement of my growth as I move forward through this life. So this response goes back to what I was just talking about like 3-4 minutes ago about there are men who feel as if they're not being supported in their relationship as they grow. And again, that saddens me, right? Here's the thing. I've never dated, and been in a relationship with a man outside of my race. I do not know what it's like to love a white man. I've never done it. And people would say it's probably the same thing as loving a black man. And this is where I disagree. I think loving a black man is very different than loving any other race of men, especially white men. The environment that you have to create in order for love to flourish with a black man it's got to be different. Why? Because they deal with things in this outside world that no other race of men truly ever deals with. And whether they live in Canada, the US, Germany, Switzerland, Dubai, they still carry that blackness with them. Whether they make $40,000 a year or $400,000 a year or $4 million a year, they carry their blackness with them. And so what they deal with when they walk through those doors, again, is something that we can never imagine. I always say, I would never want to be a man, and I specifically would never want to be a black man. Ever. If I came back, I will not lie, as beautiful as black men is, as much as I love you, I would never want to walk this earth as a black man, because I know already what I deal with as a black woman. I cannot imagine being in the body of a black man and dealing with the mental anguish that comes with being a black man. And so for me, loving a black man looks like peace. Loving a black man looks like respect. Loving a black man looks like loyalty. Loving a black man looks like comfort. Loving a black man, again, looks like peace. Loving a black man looks like sometimes solitude. Loving a black man looks like nurturing. Loving a black man looks like nourishment. It is very different to love a black man than it is to love another man, because no other man has to deal with what the Black man deals with. So this show was very important to me because, again, as I was writing the book and I took the time to go back and, you know, and I won't lie, watching videos with me and my ex from the past are not easy, right? Like, as you can imagine, I haven't erased any of them, because I won't. It's part of the history of the show. But going back and watching the shows aren't always easy, but I use them as fuel for my book and for this show. But watching that particular show back and really having him look at me and say, "You're the only woman who's ever asked me," and he said it publicly, "You're the only woman in my life who has ever asked me, how can you love me better?" And again, this man is a 6'9" former professional basketball player who has done the things with lots of women and had been married before me. To think that no woman had dared to ever ask him that question in his 40 odd years of life, um, was crazy to me. And so I knew it was important for me to continually ask that question and ask that of women to ask that question. And I'm just going to put this comment up here. I'm learning how to do this to pin this comment. What do you have to do in order to maintain that emotional position for us Black men that you just expressed? What do you have to do in order to maintain that emotional position for us Black men that you just have to express? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So I want to make sure that I get the question right. So if the question is, what do I personally have to do to maintain that? I can answer that question, but Shelby, if you don't mind just clarifying the question so that I get that right, so that I can answer that correctly. So if the question is, what do I personally do to maintain, I can answer that. But if it's something else, yes, okay. So what do I personally do to maintain that? Let's start with one of the first things that I did, um, therapy. Let's just start with therapy. Um, I had a complicated relationship with love, and I wrote a letter to love, for that show, and it's a letter that I'm going to share in my book, where I wrote a letter to love, and I am blessed to have had an amazing father in my life. I have amazing men with my life, so this didn't come from daddy issues or anything like that. I was blessed to have a really solid foundation of men in my life, but I had a really complicated relationship of love, and I'll get into it in the book. But one of the things that I had to do was sit down for a second and go to therapy, and figure some things out about my life, and really do the work that was necessary, because I was almost scared of love. I was scared of love, and I was one of those women who, like, I gave you just enough, but not too much. So if the relationship ended, I was like, oh, okay, it ended, bye. Because I'd seen what truly being in love has done to women. I left women in puddles and tears, and I was like, I don't want no part of that. And I had to figure out why that was. And again, it wasn't because I had daddy issues, but there were some other things that I needed to figure out, and therapy helped me do that. I meditate, drink water, work out, and mind my business. Like, that's actually a real thing. I'm not even joking about that. I know sometimes we joke about that, but I don't. Meditation was also key, being centered, understanding that if I want a certain environment in my life, I also have to create that certain environment in my life, right? I making sure that I had a tidy past. The issue that my ex and I had, which led to the demise of our relationship, is that he had an untidy past. And unfortunately, that untidy past was seeping into our present and was damn well going to dismantle our future. And he had to fix the past, and in order to fix the past, unfortunately, meant that we couldn't be together, because his past was impacting his ability to have a future with me. And so, in thinking about that situation, I was like, I made sure to have a tidy past. So any men that came into my life, especially because I was a young mom, Shelby, I have a 22-year-old daughter. any man that came into my life wouldn't have to deal with me having to tidy anything up. They could sit down with my daughter's father. They could hang out. They could have a conversation. No bad blood, no nothing. Like my daughter's father and I have a great relationship to this day, and she's 22 because we know we are going to have marriages and babies and all these things that we have to do together. We just had a graduation with her in October, right? Like we understood that our daughter was the most important thing that we'd ever done together, and we needed to make sure that we were two mature adults raising a child. So I tidied up my past. So there's so many things that I had to do to make sure that my life was good, so that any man walking into my life was walking into a very good environment. And I think, there are a lot of people who say, well, if they love me, they'll stick around and they'll love me into being better. Like, I don't expect someone to love me into healing, because that's just difficult to do. You've got to come healed. I can't love somebody into healing. They have to come healed. And so it was important that if I had anything that was back here that I needed to deal with, I had to deal with it before trying to bring anybody into my life. So Shelby, I hope that answered the question. But like I meditate every day. I work out 6 days a week to get my mind right and my body together. I drink water. I read. I've got a great bookshelf over here. You can't see it, but I read lots of books. I write books. I really try to get my mind in a good place. I surround myself with positive and amazing people. I've had the same best friends. I am 44. For the last 20, my oldest, closest friend is since I was 5, so that's 39 years. And then the group that I hang out with, here in Toronto, because my best friend from Jamaica, I've known her since I was 5. That's been 39 years. But my core friends here in Toronto, Canada, we've been best friends for almost 30 years, 26, 27. So basically 30 years. And I've got this really great group of people that I surround myself with, that are able to give me advice and nurture and love me. And it's interesting, like, when you have those types of friendships, the funny thing about it is that female relationships are almost like a, a trial run for marriage, right? And thank you, Shelby. Shelby said that was such a good answer. I appreciate that. It was a genuine answer. But female relationships are a trial run for an actual relationship and marriage, because in our decades of friendship, almost 30-year friendships, we've been through some things, right? Like, we've had arguments, we've had disagreements, we've had to have literally mediate situations between us. We've had so much, we've raised our kids together, we've done so much together. And I remember my ex saying to me, the fact that, I had these decade-long friendships was something that made him choose me, because he was like, I meet women who are changing best friends every 5 years, and here you are having these, very long friendships. And, before, because we were in different countries, I set up a meeting between him and my brother and him and my best friends, so that he could get to know me through their eyes, right? Because that was really important to me, and to show that we had a support system around us of positive people who were going to influence our relationship in a very positive way. So, those are things that I think are really important, because again, to me, if I can't maintain a female relationship, how the hell am I going to, maintain a male female relationships? Because, my love for my best friends is very different than the love for the man that I'm with, right? But it's still genuine, and it's so loyal, and it's so respectful. One is just a little bit different because it's because it's the vagina is involved. We'll get into that. I will read. I've got a couple more answers to read. I've got 2 more answers to read, and then I am going to play the voice note that I got about someone saying how they want to be loved. So I think this is like the 10th or 11th. The 11th response I got about how men want to be loved, was this response: with space and given the grace to be able to love, I want to be cared for, but not made the whole world, because we all have different faces to us. So I need the understanding that I love other people and other people love me. That was an interesting one. And this person's actually really close to me, and I know where that's coming from. I think, we have to be mindful about how our partner receives and gives love. And that's why that question, how can I love you better? And then also in turn, how do you want to be loved, is important if you're going into a relationship, because we need to decide whether or not we're able to give that person love in the way that they want to be loved. Because the love that I have and the way that I express my love to my ex doesn't mean that the new man wants to be loved that same way. And if I don't, and this is more than just love language, I mean like the outward essence of love. How do they even see love, right? That is another question. And again, I'm going to talk about this in my book, but this is another question. And it actually opens up my book. Again, my book will be out late spring, early summer. Fuck Your Feelings, The Journey to Imperfect Love. But let's also start with, what is the person's relationship with love? I think that's a fundamental question. And it was a question that I had to ask myself, which is why I wrote A Letter to Love. So it's not just understanding how they want to be loved, how you can love them better, but it's also, what is their relationship with love? How did they see love growing up? How did they receive love as a child? How did they give love as an adult? Have there been disappointments in love for them? Like, all of those are such big fundamental questions, and it's so important. Love is dynamic and it's explosive and it's all of these different things, but love is supposed to feel safe. And how many of us don't feel safe in love? The idea of loving someone, the idea of giving someone, it's like for a lot of us, and I will speak as a woman, I will not speak as men. There are men online that would love you to chime in, but there are a lot of women who don't necessarily feel safe in love. They actually feel safer, and this is awful, but this is what's happening. A lot of women feel safer giving their bodies than giving their hearts. Like, drops my. And if I can speak for the men, I would think that a lot of men feel the same way. But I don't speak for men, I speak for women, because I am not a man. But I will tell you, again, a lot of women feel safer, and I put safer in quotation, giving their bodies than giving their hearts. And in my book, which I will bring up again, sorry, as I leaned over, hopefully I didn't basic instinct anybody. And in my book, No Handouts for Black Girls, please get my book on Amazon. No Handouts for Black Girls. It's my 7th book. But in my book, No Handouts for Black Girls, I talk about falling in love with my ex, and how falling in love with my ex was like me standing naked in front of him, with my heart in my hand, praying that he wouldn't drop it. That was what love was like to me. And if I can find the section of the book that I have it, so I'm actually going to read. Yeah, I'm going to read. Okay, this is a great one. Before I read it, I'm going to read the comment online. So thank you again, Shelby. He says, we Black men have to confront, let me actually pin it. Okay. We Black men have to confront our feelings about not being deserving of love. We do often run away from them who are honestly attempting to genuinely love us. That was real. Ladies, I want you to listen to that. That was read. I'm going to read it again. We, Black men, have to confront our feelings about not being deserving of love. We do often run away from them who are honestly attempting to genuinely love us. And we do too. Because love, as joyous as it can be, it can also be the worst pain and hurt you ever feel in your life. So I'm actually going to read from my book again, No Handouts for Black Girls. It is actually, so this chapter was titled "You're Single Because You're a Bitch." It hurts to hear, but it's true. So I'm just going to read what I said when I fell in love with my ex. So I said, I fell in love last year, not just love, an obsessive dive into the deep end, even though I can't swim type of love. I handed my heart without fear or words of warning not to fumble or drop it type of love. The oh my God, what am I getting myself into kind of love. That oh Lord, it feels so good kind of love. I've never before experienced this kind of love. Never in my life did I think I would either. And until recently, I didn't even know it was the kind of love I wanted. Wait, that's a lie. I did desire it, but I never thought I'd get it. So instead, I convinced myself I didn't want it. That way, I wouldn't be disappointed if I didn't experience it. I was once told, in order to find love, you have to be open to being hurt. I remember thinking it was the stupidest shit I've ever heard. What do I look like signing up for someone to hurt me? I had seen what falling in love and being hurt by it had done to those around me. The tears, sleepless nights, anxiety caused by worry, and the breakdowns when the shit did in fact hurt. I was supposed to sign up for that. It was a no for me, dog. I may have wanted companionship, but it came at too high of a cost. Then something happened that made me begin to reevaluate my stance. My best friend fell in love and got married. Her husband was from a different culture, faith, and racial background, and to top it off, he was younger than she was, yet they were making it work. Having had a front seat to their relationship, I was able to bear witness to the transformational nature of their love, but I still wasn't sure that it would be my story. My dating life was good, and I certainly didn't have a shortage of suitors. Even if I never found their kind of love, my social calendar would never be empty. Um, you can get the book to read the rest because there's more, but I think we have to be raw and honest about our desire for love, our need for love, our want for love, and what. Let me actually back up. Will we recognize love when it shows up in our life? Will we recognize it? There are some of us that will, and some of us that won't, because, like Shelby and I both said, from a male and a female perspective, we're running from it. I ran from it for years, and I was married, and I was still running from love. This idea, because again, I appreciate the beauty of love and the glorious nature of love, but I also knew that love could hurt, and I didn't want the hurt. And trust me, as someone who is almost 7 months out of a relationship to a man I thought I was going to have forever with, that shit really does hurt. It hurts like hell, but I would do it again in a heartbeat, because love can also be transformational, and it can be a beautiful thing. It can, even if it doesn't, and it doesn't have to last. Sometimes it's not meant to last. Sometimes somebody comes into your life and you will love them and they love you, and it was just that lesson that you needed to learn. So when the other person shows up, you can give them everything you've got. So I've got a couple more answers that I want to read, and I want to thank you all who are joining me and are giving your responses. So The oh, my phone froze. Give me a second. So the last one that I got was the following, and then I'm going to play the voice note that I had. So the last person who wrote into me said, I want to be loved by being respected. Loyalty and respect are big for me. Also, play your role, handle your responsibilities, and be reliable. Support the union and the vision, and the rest will take care of itself. Hear those words again. Respect and loyalty came up again. Respect and loyalty. So the three words that have been the theme from the response that I've gotten from men are unconditionally, respect, and loyalty. Unconditionally, respect, and loyalty. The number one rule in my last relationship was no disrespect, and it will be the number one rule in my next relationship. Please, Jesus, find me a man. Um, Apparently, I'm not supposed to pray to Jesus to find me a man, but him and my daddy are up there. They're conspiring. I know something good's going on because I am not for these single streets, but I digress. Moving on. But the theme has been, again, unconditionally respect and loyalty. So I'm actually then going to play the voice note that I received from someone who took the moment to express to me. Um, okay, and I'm going to turn it down for a second because he starts off with something else. Because he was responding to me. I think there's a point. I think it's at this point. Hold on. Okay, I'm hoping this is it.
Show, yeah, here we go. How do I want to be loved? I think as a man, I won't say personally, I'll say in third person. I think men in general, well, I'll how do I want to be loved? Love is through good conversation. Your partner, being able to tap into your feelings, tap into how you're feeling, what you're going through. I think all of that is a form of love and just being able to, my partner, to and just being able to understand me, whether I'm going through, something, whatever I'm going through, or whatever we go through in life is meant to be going through together as a couple, vice versa. I'm here for her, for her feelings. She's here for me. She's here for, I'm there. We're there together. What love is all about, showing it, proving it, and and then not doesn't mean sexually either, because I know as much as people stress sex and physical, that's only like a small part of it. I feel like if somebody could grab your attention mentally, then the physical will come, and there's nothing that can come between that bond that you have with somebody mentally, emotionally, and just that connection that you have with somebody once it's established, right? So, but the physical, don't get me wrong, is important, and you do show love through physical, through sex, and through sexual interaction. Of course, you do. But in the big picture, I feel that that's small. That's small. Sex is small. Sex is big, but it's small. You know what I mean? So hopefully that makes sense. But I'm more coming from the aspect of how do I want to be loved? I want to feel comfortable around a woman enough to be secure. Or I tell her how I feel and let her in my and into my mind of my most deepest, darkest inner concerns, fears, aspiration, goals, and things like that. So hopefully that makes sense. And text me back and let.
So you all need to the rest of that, but um, that was profound, and he took the time to think about it and respond to me like hours later with a very thoughtful response. And ladies, I hope you heard him say, yes, the physical is important, but I want a woman who also makes me feel safe and allows me the ability to be vulnerable. A lot of us are leading with vagina And I said it before, and I will say it again. Ladies, if you are leading with your vagina, you have already lost. There is nothing to be gained by completely leading with vagina. If you're trying to find love through vagina, then just get paid to have sex. Because it doesn't work. And I know your mama, sister, friends, cousin, church sister, auntie, Mabel, Tina, Marie, they might have done that. And you think, well, I know one person of the 8 point whatever billion people in life and the hundreds of people I'm surrounded with, well, they did it to work for me. It will not work for you. The men are saying it. He's not the first man who's ever told me that sex is, yes, it's great, but sex is not going to be the reason I choose someone to be my lifetime partner. Respect, loyalty, support, commitment. Like, you know what I'm saying? Nurturing, love, safety. I think it's funny, and I'm going to end shortly, but in the end, because I'm going to do this show next week, and I'm going to ask women the same question, and I'm going to come on, I'm going to say what the women say, but I will tell you for me, I'm just going to answer for me. In order to truly love you, and the best way for me to be loved is to feel safe. Safety is important for me, right? We talk about protection and provision. Part of protecting me is making me feel safe. Part of providing for me is making me feel safe. I can't truly give my full self to you without feeling safe. I definitely can't give my body to a man without feeling safe. God bless you women who can do that, but I cannot. I cannot. I cannot give my body to a man who does not make me feel safe. Every time I have to start relationships over, and the thought of being intimate with someone for the first time, as great as I might look on the outside, inside I'm always like, is this man going to accept me? Is this man like, all of these questions go through your mind, and we go through all of these things, when you're with somebody for the first time. At least I can speak for myself, I do. But that goes away, ladies, when a man makes you feel safe. And so I'm hearing men say what I hear women say. And I guarantee you next week's show, these themes that men said, unconditionally, loyalty, respect, feeling safe, vulnerable, having that safe space to be yourself, love without conditions again, like, we're going to say the same thing. And if we are actually listening to each other, I created this show for us to listen to each other. There is so much of this happening. If you only have to read the comment section of Kendra G's show to see that there tends to be a lot of this. So much, no one is stopping and listening because they're so quick to respond. Love is also patient. There's a level of patience you need to have love, because love has to come with understanding. And you can't understand somebody if you're impatient. Why? Because when we are impatient, we listen to respond, not to understand. So love is also patient. I want to be loved patiently, as impatient as my ass is in like real life. But I want to be loved through patience and understanding. And I challenge all of you who are in relationships. This is how I'm going to leave it. I challenge all of you that are in relationships. I want you to ask your partners the following 3 questions. And if you want to take it up a notch, if you want to take it one step further, I'm going to ask you to ask them to write a letter to love. So the questions I want you to ask your partners, I'll repeat it, are: what is your relationship with love? And I would challenge you to, again, take it up a notch and ask them to write a letter to love. Not a letter to you, but a letter to the concept of love and what love has meant in their life. The next question I'd like you to ask them is, how do you want to be loved? And give them the space in the room to answer that. And then the third question I would like you to ask them is, how can I love you better? Because there are three distinct questions. Again, what is your relationship with love? Take it up a notch and ask them to write a letter to love. How do you want to be loved? And let them explain how they want to be loved. And then only the last question is where you bring yourself into it, where you will then ask them, how can I love you better? I'm not a relationship expert. I don't pretend to be. I simply have a psychology degree, and I've spent years going through makeups and breakups and relationships and watching people do it. I do not pretend to be an expert, but I desire for people to have the best relationships they can. And even though I sit here single after spending 3 years with the men that I thought I was going to marry, I know that my time will come again, and I'm going to give that next man even more so, because I learned so much from the last relationship I was in. And I'm so ready to give even more love because I know how transformational love is. And I really want us Black women who desire to be loved and love Black men to listen to what they have to say about how they want to be loved. So I hope this show was useful. I'm going to do, like I said, next week I'm going to do the same exact show, but I'm going to read what Black women have to say about how they want to be loved. And I hope the men show up for that, and I hope the women show up for that and they respond. Because if I'm going to change the conversation around Black relationships, which is my aim, we need to be able to have these conversations. And I won't lie, it's not like it's easy for me, again, coming out of a relationship that I thought was going to be my last one, but it is important because this is like therapy for me. And hopefully it's helpful for you. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you to the gentlemen who were on YouTube tonight, who were responded. Thank you for creating a space of respectful discourse. That is what my show was about. It is about respectful discourse, because I really do want to change the conversation. So thank you, gentlemen on YouTube. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen on Instagram. I wish you adieu. Go have a great night. Go hug your loved ones and let me know what they say when you ask them those questions. You can DM me on Instagram. You can please subscribe to my YouTube page and make comments under this video. And you can also email me at fyftheshow@gmail.com and let me know what your partners say when you ask them those questions. Love you all. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Have a good night. Goodbye, YouTube. Good night.